on Thursday, February 16th, 2023 at 7:07 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we begin, I would like to have a moment of silence for Sarah Labouzenaire, former Cumberland High School graduate who lost her life this week. We send our condolences to Sarah's family and friends at this difficult time. Next, we'll move into the consent agenda. Item A, approval of minutes, Cumberland Town Council School Committee Joint Meeting, 1/25/2023, regular meeting, 1/26/2023, special meeting, 2/7/2023. Item B, approval of minutes, executive session, 1/26/2023. Item C, enrollment report, 2/1/2023. Item D, school police report, 1/1/2023. Item E, school bus inspection reports, 2/1/2023. Item F, residency truancy report, 2/1/2023. I need a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Collins?
Did we approve the agenda?
Maybe not.
But second on this.
Thank you. Second by Mrs. Feather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0 for the record. Mr. Fiorello and Ms. Smith are not able to be here tonight. So we'll go back and approve the agenda. So I need a motion to approve. Motion by Mrs. Feather.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes 5-0. Thank you for that. Okay. Next item on the agenda is personnel announcements. Mrs. Duncanson.
Good evening. I have two appointments for you tonight. First is the appointment of Cheyenne Terrain, ELA Essentials McCourt, 1 year only, effective February 6, 2023. And the second is an appointment, a rehire of Natalie Rivera, paraprofessional PALS at Community, effective February 8th, 2023. Second, I have a retirement after 28 years of service, effective July 7th, 2023, of Brian Weber, custodian at BF Norton. I congratulate him and thank him for his service. And I have two probationary employee separation announcements effective February 8th, 2023, of Brianna Aguiar, and effective February 9th, 2023, of Nicole Machado. Finally, I have a resignation effective February 13th, 2023, of Cynthia Durkin, math grade 7 at North Cumberland Middle School. That is all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, well, Mrs. Duncanson, I just want to, on behalf of the school committee, acknowledge that this is your last school committee meeting. Tomorrow is your last day in the district as you move on to brighter and better things. But it has been really a pleasure to work with you. We've been really, really fortunate to have your expertise, and we wish you the best of luck in what comes next, and we will really miss you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed my time in Cumberland. It's really a gem of a place to work and go to school, and I'm forever grateful for this place.
Next on the agenda, we have report out of executive session meeting on 2/16/2023. Report out of executive session votes. We did not take any votes. Next is a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session. Moved by Mrs. Rogalski.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Feather. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Thornton isn't able to be here tonight because he's at the superintendent's conference, I think.
Yes.
So we are fortunate to have Mr. D'Amato with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the committee. And so I'd like to do the same on behalf of the administration. I'd like to thank Mrs. Duncanson for her services here in Cumberland. It was a pleasure working with her, and we certainly wish you all the best in your new adventure. So this evening there's a short superintendent's report, which is typical of when Dr. Thornton is not around. But, so later on in the agenda, under new business, there is discussion around the school calendar options. And so I just want to give you a little quick background on the differences between the two. They're quite slight. There aren't very many differences between them, but giving you the background information before it comes up in new business. There are two options, option A and option B. One of the things that we needed to do in both calendars was we needed to begin prior to September 7th per the state, and so both calendars do that with the same start dates for the first day of school. Calendar A has February vacation in it. Calendar B does not. There are also two choices of professional development days on both calendars. On calendar A, March 28th is one choice. In addition, we would have to choose either March 8th versus April 23rd, which is a state PD day that we can take advantage of. And on calendar B, it would either be February 20th or April 23rd as well. Those are the main differences in both calendars. The end date on calendar A with February vacation would be June 17th, and the end date in calendar B would be June 11th. So those are the main highlights. One thing to note, Dr. Thornton did poll, or had Mrs. Carlson poll the teachers union, and 73.5%, I believe, of the members chose calendar A with February vacation. Okay. As far as B, school construction update, Dr. Thornton has been adding pictures into the school committee folder. There's no presentation tonight, but he will give you all new updates when he's back next meeting. Okay? And that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Germana. Any questions or comments for Mr. Germana?
I do have one question.
Mr. Collins?
With the options, it's less about which calendar is chosen, but with the flexibility of the PD days,
Yes.
does that decision have to be made tonight, or is that something that's going to be left up to you?
It's not a decision that has to be made tonight. Probably, I would make a recommendation to Dr. Thornton about what I think would be feasible, and then he would present that to you all, and you would make the decision.
Fair enough, thank
Right.
you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Moving on. Next is reports of standing committees. Item A, Fiscal Management Subcommittee update. Mr. Collins?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, all those in attendance and fellow committee members. The Fiscal Management Subcommittee met this evening. We've six resolutions for the committee, actually 7 technically, because we have one under new business, for your review this evening, and we also have payment of the bills in the amount of $1,919,299.97. We discussed, as we always do, we had the business office monthly report, long-term projections, and that's it. We uneventful. No, there's always events, but it was no, there was nothing else to report. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Collins. Next is the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee update. Actually, Mr. Fiorello is not here tonight. Did the policy? Did not meet this week. Okay, thank you. Next is the Achievement and Communication Subcommittee update. I will also turn this over to Mr. Collins since I wasn't there.
Yes, the Achievement and Communication Subcommittee met on Tuesday, February 7th, and we discussed the primary order of business was Mr. Domana's Assistant Superintendent's budget suggestions as it pertains to student achievement. Again, he gave as always, gave a very detailed presentation discussing some of the federal funding we're using, we're going to be losing. One of the takeaways is, people are like, what are we asking for? Mr. Domana, to his credit, is not asking for a lot. The only recommendations he's making to Dr. Thornton is the $35,000, the MLL Family Outreach position, which we began to discuss in the previous meeting, and to his credit, he got the ball rolling real fast with that, and he's looking for some funding for the next 2 years to pay for some middle school social studies curriculum updates. And then we discussed about, the next steps for what schools are going to be coming in. And, so it was strictly budget, and we're going to be hearing more about that in the coming months. So I think that's it, unless there's anything you want to add, Mr. Domana. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the District Health and Wellness Subcommittee update, Mrs. Rogalski?
Well, I'm going to take Mr. Collins' usual role, and I have a lot to talk about tonight. So sorry to slow the meeting down. So District Health and Wellness met at the end of January, and we actually had quite a productive meeting. We started it off with Shauna Trudell from Sodexo. We had a good discussion about looking into the billing processes of Sodexo, accounts that are past due. With the ending of the federal grant that provided free meals, we're starting to see balances stack up again. And so it was not only just discussing how to help families kind of resolve those negative balances, but also the fact that it's coming down on schools a lot. And while schools rely, we rely on the schools to be nurturing and caring, they're not bill collectors. And so the discussion came up of whether perhaps it's a position that needs to be created through Sodexo or through the billing office to pursue those accounts instead of on the secretaries and the principals of the schools. Along with that, she did tell us some good news that there are far fewer errors this year because they've changed the method of checkout at the schools. So there are fewer mistakes with children getting charged for the wrong items when they're checking out. They've removed the menu options or changed something on the computer screen so that people are not messing up as much as they were before. So hopefully people are not seeing errors in their accounts where students are charged for lunch when they just got milk. And the last thing with Sodexo is they are also, we're going to be looking into the fees for any families that use the My School Bucks, which is the online funding system for lunches. They're charging a fee every time you add money to your account. And so we're going to kind of look around, see what other places are charging, kind of get an idea if that's adjustable at all. So that was Sodexo. After that, we discussed a People's Garden grant, which is something that I had found and brought to the committee. It is a grant set up through the U.S., I'm forgetting it now, and I didn't write that part down. But basically, it gives money to schools to create either raised bed gardens or what's called a high tunnel, which is basically a greenhouse without electrics. And the idea is not only to create, pollinator beds or gardens, but to have academic and community resources for schools where you can bring communities into the schools, whether it be parent meetings or something with the communities, and you can have science projects, and you can have kids bring home vegetables from the garden to the home with a recipe. And so just to kind of get them all involved, and that's something I think we're going to pursue next year. We thought it might be a good idea with our new elementary schools to do something along those lines. The grant date actually opened on the day of our meeting, and probably was too short notice to get it in for this year. It's quite an involved application process, but I think we're going to look into that next year. We got an update from Dr. Santa on the Satchel Pulse surveys. They've all been administered to schools. They're starting to go through the data. What's going to happen now is that they're going to be able to look at the children who fall into, I believe, the yellow and the red zones, and match up kids who are indicating that they need services with who's already receiving services and see where the gap is and see the children that aren't being served and try to resolve that. Sodexo is doing an audit, which we are going to be helping them with at the next meeting. We're going to actually be reviewing menu items and doing taste testing for different cafeteria foods. So I think everyone's looking forward to having some tasty tater tots and food at the next meeting. And the other thing that I just want to let you all know is that we discussed at the last meeting, I brought it to the committee that in the future I would like to look into vape education, not just at the high school, but at the middle and elementary schools, because we know it is a very pervasive problem at the high school, and it is becoming such at the middle school despite Mrs. Coughlin's and Dr. Masterson's best efforts. Along with that, we're going to be looking at the curriculum that Mr. Damana is working on revamping, but also something as simple as what the nurses are doing in the schools. Are there presentations? Are there posters? Something even down to the elementary level. But when we brought it up, it became apparent that a lot of the elementary school principals and administrators, teachers, and perhaps some middle schools just simply don't know what they're looking for because it's not something that they're used to. So I actually reached out to Mr. Carpenter and Mr. Kuntz, who are the deans at the high school, and asked them if they would be willing to put together a presentation for middle and elementary school teachers on a PD day or maybe one of the early release days, just to go into the schools and say, this is what you want to look for, this is what vapes look like, because this is new to so many of us. So we're going to get started on that, and I think that we're all pretty excited about kind of bringing more awareness to that. So we have several things to do coming up over the next few months, and our next meeting is March 2nd.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogalski. Next on the agenda, public hearing, reading of new policy, second reading, J27, suicide prevention. We read this, the first reading was at the last meeting. We did discuss it. Mr. Fiorello is not here tonight. We will be voting on this, but I don't know if anyone has any questions, maybe for Dr. Santa, or, I know we did discuss this last time. Okay. So next here is public comment related to this policy. No, almost. I don't think we have any public comments related to this policy, but next we have comments from the public. President Kinch.
Thank you. First and foremost, on behalf of the Cumberland Town Council, I want to congratulate Ms. Duncanson and thank you for everything that you've done for the Cumberland education community. So thank you so much. Amy, on the raised gardens, I'm just throwing it out that maybe the Cumberland Land Trust could be some help to you about that particular topic. I know it's come up in a lot of those meetings that I go to. So reach out to them next year. They might be able to be a little bit of assist, and they're always willing to volunteer. And the last, I just wanted to give you an update. We did table the Charter Review Commission. I just wanted to give you a heads up on that because the school committee gets an appointment. So we're going to hear, and again, any, as the mayor would say, any 4 councils on a given night can change things, right? But hopefully it'll pass March 1st, and we're going to probably appoint our member 2 weeks later on the 15th, the following meeting. So they'll have a long time. It may be a little under the gun for you guys just hearing it today, and I'm sure they won't get up and going until you name someone anyway. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that or where that stood. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments from the public, next is new business. Item A, discussion and/or vote to approve certified teacher non-renewals. This was discussed in executive, so we need a motion. Motion to approve by Mrs. Rogalski,
Second with discussion.
second by Mr. Collins with discussion.
Yeah, it's, we do this every year, and I think I say the same thing every year. This is unfortunately standard operating procedure. I have been I've been the victim of this my first 3 years of teaching, I had to deal with this. So the hope is, and I know the intent is of administration to, once this is all, the dust is all settled and the school year ends, the goal is to get as many of these teachers back as possible. So, people can start thinking about that. So, so I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. Next item, item B, discussion and or vote on memorandum of agreement to resolve all disputes with CTA, NEARI involving payment of 1% bonus under the current CBA. We did discuss this in exec, so we have a motion to approve by Mrs. Rogalski, second by Mrs. Feather. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. Next item, discussion and or vote to approve the RIDE MOA Arts Initiative SBA Capital Fund. Mr. Collins, thank you.
Good evening. Again, this came up during fiscal subcommittee. This is a grant that deals with, obviously, the arts, as the title indicates. There is a deadline on this, so what we're approving tonight is the memorandum, which has to be used, I believe, by the end of June. This did pass Fiscal Management Subcommittee 2-0, and I know the administration has already identified things within the district that they're looking to purchase, but they have to be done by the end of June. So again, this passed Fiscal Management Subcommittee 2-0, and I would move passage to the full committee.
Mr. Collins makes a motion to approve the RIDE MOA Arts Initiative SBA Capital Fund. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Vogel. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It passes 5-0, and I will need everyone to sign this before you leave tonight. So, Next item on the agenda, item D, discussion of options for the 2023-2024 school calendar. So this is just a discussion tonight, and then we will vote likely at our next meeting. So any discussion? Mr. Dumana had walked us through the options. Anything that any committee members would like to add? Mr. Collins.
As always, I support February vacation. I think, obviously, the only argument against it would be, more time to get ready for standardized testing. But I teach, when you look at the approval, the CTA approved its 73, the 265 members who answered the survey approved the option A with February vacation. 73.4% wanted option A. In the years I've seen this now, I think this is my 4th year seeing this, I've never seen the number that high. Usually it's like a 60-40 split, 55-45, for a variety of reasons. And I think a lot of it has to do with student and teacher burnout, which is obvious. I think they need the rest. That's what they're telling us. And I think it also helps with the fact that, like me, I mean, if I teach in Massachusetts and my kids are in Rhode Island, it makes it very difficult to keep your kids entertained or whatever, or coordinate if one has vacation and one does not. And we're going to see it later this year, where Massachusetts and Rhode Island don't have synchronous April vacations.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I'm already thinking about it, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. So that being said, I think this does give, obviously, a lot of people work in Massachusetts or have, are teach in Massachusetts or teach here and have live in Massachusetts. So I think it does help them out. I think it's important for those students, and it's also consistent with the state calendar. So I will be in support of option A.
Any other discussion tonight? Mrs. Rogalski?
I will never win this argument. I don't want to go against the teachers. I was one. I enjoyed having February vacation. I have heard from a few that do not want February vacation. It's such a difference in the calendar. They would be a 4-day break. I know I will never win it, but I think that it would still be a nice 4-day vacation. Families could still get away. And with this calendar, with the February break, our last day of school is a Monday. And I just think that that is problematic. That's assuming no snow days. But without it, it is the week before, it's a Tuesday. And it's almost a full week's difference in the release date. And we're already so much later than everyone else. We start so late with the delay, waiting for the construction. And I would strongly urge people to think about it, because it would still be a 4-day break. But I also don't want to go against 73% of the teachers. It's just another option to consider.
And it was 73% of the 265 that completed the survey. Would be nice to get a fuller picture of all of the teachers. But any other comments? Okay, so we will leave that till next time. Next is discussion and a vote to approve homeschool instruction request for the 2022-2023 school year. Need. I'm going to give it to Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins makes a motion to approve, second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. The next item, F, discussion and a vote to approve the second reading of the new policy, J27, suicide prevention.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mrs. Feather, second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor to approve?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. Thank you. Next, discussion and a vote to approve resolutions. Mr. Collins.
Back. So we have 6 resolutions. I have to take one out of order. Number 2, SCPR-02-2023-17, owner representation services, January 2023 to Colliers. There is a typo on the resolution. I'm going to ask for an amendment to reflect in that resolution that on page 2 of the resolution, the number be changed from $50,480.14 to $54,480.14 to match the first page and the actual number on the invoice. So that amendment and the resolution passed Fiscal Management Subcommittee 2-0, and I would move passage of the amendment to the entire committee.
Okay, so
pretty good.
we need to first vote on the amended resolution. So Mr. Collins makes a motion to approve the amended resolution. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Vogel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That the amended resolution, the amendment to the resolution passes 5-0.
Thank you for that. And that being said, I would ask now that SCPR-02-2023-16 through SCPR-02-2023-2021 be approved. These passed Fiscal Management Subcommittee 2-0, and I would move passage to all 6 resolutions to the entire committee.
Mr. Collins makes a motion to approve passage of all 6 resolutions. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Vogel. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? They all pass 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Oh, Mr. Collins, wait, one more.
I'm not going anywhere. Not going anywhere.
To approve payment of bills.
And last but no means least, the payment of the bills in the amount of $1,919,299.97. Payment of bills passed Fiscal Management Subcommittee 2-0, and I would move passage to the full committee.
Mr. Collins makes a motion to approve passage of payment of bills. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Vogel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Next is school committee comments, school liaison reports. Any comments from the school committee? Mrs. Rogalski?
I just want to pass on a quick congratulations, a little selfishly because I was there, to the JV track and field team for Cumberland who took JV states last night, beating Barrington and Bishop Hendricken and LaSalle among every other school in the state. So they are JV state champions, the entire team. It was a wonderful team effort, running, throwing, jumping. It was really fantastic.
Yay.
Congratulations. Any other comments from the school committee? Oh, Mr. Collins?
You know, this is kind of, obviously, the Cumberland Police Department have had a very challenging week. Obviously, you mentioned the accident up in Pine Swamp Road, but yesterday, obviously, it was in the news, what happened Tuesday afternoon. So I want to give a lot of credit to the Cumberland Police for being, as always, being at the right place at the right time, dealing with that situation down at McCourt, which has obviously been in the news. So they're a great partner. They've been wonderful for the school department, as of all the town departments, but that police officer was just monitoring students leaving. It happened to be the right place at the right time, so that's good community policing, and it had a positive resolution for the safety and security of our students and the community in general. So thank you to the Cumberland Police Department, as always.
Okay, seeing no more comments, next item is the vote to go into executive session, but I don't believe we have executive session. Thank you. So I need a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Rogalski.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Feather. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 7:35. It passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone.